Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session, 5 Ways Conversational AI Transforms Your Lead Engagement and Sales Process. I'm Rashmi Vittal, CMO of Conversica, and actually with me today, I've got a guest speaker, Amanda DePaul. Amanda, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm Amanda. I'm the Senior Director of Demand Gen at Conversica, and Rashmi and I work super closely together on this very topic, so excited to discuss today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to try and make this fun and interactive and more of a dialogue between Amanda and I. And so, the first way we thought we'd start is just kind of kick it off with some common frustrations that we feel, and we know other marketing leaders and sales leaders feel when they're talking about their lead engagement and their sales process. So, it's funny enough, there's obviously ways that marketing leaders think about this. There's ways that sales leaders think about this. I'm going to tackle the marketing side. Amanda, you want to tackle the sales side on this one?
Yeah, I think I can represent.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's rock and roll. So first off, I hear this all the time when I'm talking to marketing leaders, and the fact that they're frustrated, they don't feel like their leads, all the leads that they're generating are actually getting followed up on, both on a timely manner and on a persistent manner. And how does that translate from a sales leader's perspective?
Sales leaders, what I hear as feedback is usually how qualified are these leads before we get them. So how worth it is it for us to even follow up?
Yeah, very, very fair argument. And then the next thing we hear is that from marketing leaders is that you're investing a lot of time in webinars and events like this one, and so you're not always satisfied with the ROI that you might be getting out of these programs. And from a sales leader's perspective,
a lot of these events yield a lot of names, and a lot of times that outreach doesn't really result in connects. So it feels like a waste of time.
Yeah, and connects is really important because you can't have a dialogue if you don't connect with the individual. Well, coming back to it, it's like, this is one that I don't know how many of you have had conversations within your own teams, but please don't ignore the leads that come from content syndication, especially if they've engaged, shown intent, and are now in market.
And again, there's a high volume of leads that come in from said source that, sometimes causes sales to feel like they're spinning their wheels. And so they say, I need more meetings, and these aren't going to yield me meetings, so I'm not going to do it.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then the other thing is, what do I do with all of these no response, but high intent leads? Like, so somebody could have come in through a demo request, somebody could have, and then you're trying to follow up. That's some high intent coming in as a demo request. But if nobody's, responding to your outreach, what do you do?
I think that that's a common problem on both sides of the fence. Usually sales is equally frustrated that they have stalled out opportunities and stalled out conversations. And so it's a conundrum, I think, for both parties.
Yeah, and I think though, this is absolutely a common frustration shared by both marketing and sales leaders. And that is, at the end of the day, from a marketing perspective, we want to see that the pipeline and revenue targets are being hit. And more importantly, we want to see the investments that we're making, meaning those MQLs or MQAs, whether you're running an ABM strategy or not, are actually turning into meetings, and those meetings into pipeline. I think that's a pretty common target for most sales leaders as well.
Yeah, I would say I don't have enough pipeline in every walk of life I've ever been in. So yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And so anyway, with these frustrations, what you're going to hear us talk through is kind of, why are there these frustrations, and what can we do? How can we do some things differently to overcome some of these frustrations? But first, let's start with, why is this the case?
Yeah, so we actually at Conversica, we did a study last year. We do this every year, and we basically secret shop various companies to understand, what is their sales process like? How good are they at follow-up? And we aggregate all that data and we put it together, and we kind of do sort of a rating against what we're seeing as far as persistence, promptness, personalization, and performance. So we call those the 4 Ps of sales follow-up. And you really need to hit all 4 in order to have an effective follow-up process. We found that often we were only getting 1 or 2 attempts at outreach after we filled out something like a contact us or a demo request form. In fact, 65% of the companies we reached out to only reached out to us up to 2 times, including 0 times. So we all know it takes 11, 15, upwards of that even to drive any engagement. So 2 isn't going to cut it. We also noticed some slow response times. So 55% of the companies we surveyed took 9 hours or longer to even respond to us. And now especially people are, kind of demanding instant gratification. When they reach out, they expect to hear back pretty quickly. 9 hours is a long time to go talk to your competitor. We found that there was a severe lack of personalization. 70% of the companies that we surveyed failed to personalize at all. And really, you should have at least 5 elements of personalization in every email in order to drive engagement: name, company, title, some fun fact about a person. Otherwise, people just kind of go deaf to it. And lastly, it's something that I think gets forgotten a lot, but where does your email even end up when you're sending that follow-up? Does it end up in a primary inbox, or does it end up in one of those funky folders that Gmail gives you that is like a promotions folder or something like that, never to be seen again? We found that only 12% of companies were consistently landing in the primary inbox of ours. So, that really puts you at a disadvantage really out the gate. Even if you do nail the other 3 Ps, if nobody sees your email, you're kind of in a tough spot. So, these are really important to hit in order to drive better engagement across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And, what's really interesting is that the result of this lack of, strong customer engagement, which is today mostly human powered, right? When we think about that type of customer engagement, it is humans or people who are the ones that are trying to do the follow up, with their prospects or their customers. And what this results in, unfortunately, is what we call a leaky funnel. The fact that all these places where you're not being persistent, or you're not being prompt, or you're not being personalized, or you're just not hitting those performance metrics is because you're not doing these things, and you're causing a leaky funnel. And if you just think about it, there's so many different places where that leaky funnel can occur. First, obviously, it could come if people are coming onto your website and you're not engaging with them in a real-time fashion to either help to connect them to the information they seek, or capture their lead information so that you can follow up with them later. That's a missed opportunity. Or that if you are driving folks to your events, but you're not hitting your target goals of registrations, what can you do to better propel that so you can actually not only meet but maybe exceed your registration goals? And then when you have these registered folks, are you able to follow up with them in a timely manner to see, one, whether they have any more information that they need to have, or whether they want to connect to somebody. And it kind of moves through the process. If you think about it, how many times do you feel confident in literally the leads that you're handing over to sales? It could have MQL'd, but your lead scoring in your qualification structure is never going to be a perfect science, right? It's a lot of kind of intent and inference in terms of whether something's ready to sales. There's a real opportunity here through personalized outreach to directly ask and see if the lead is actually qualified. And then it just kind of moves right on down. When you think about the sales outreach, we talked about those 4 Ps absolutely result in having low touch, no touch, or even unresponsive type of scenarios. And then obviously there's this whole notion of unnoticed, right? At some point in time in your leaky funnel, you're going to have a bunch of leads that have had no activity really greater than 90 days, maybe 120 days. What are you doing there? Are they just sitting idly? Is there an opportunity to reinvigorate those? And so this is really where you think about, how can companies utilize conversational AI solutions to drive better customer engagement? And this is really important. One of the ways that you could do it is start, filling those leaks, right? Stop those leaks by being able to use conversational AI at those very points where you're breaking in your lead and sales engagement process. So here's an idea. Obviously everybody's very familiar with the chatbot. Of course, you can put chatbots on your website that can handle the real-time interaction. But as you capture those leads and they're moving through the top of the funnel, what's really important is that you have an opportunity to also use conversational AI here to help drive those lead registrations. If you have that list of who is looking to attend an event, are you reaching out to them to see if they're coming to your session or if they're going to come visit you at the booth? Or afterwards, if they have, how are you following up? And so at every point here, you're going to see that there are really 5 key ways where you can plug up those holes in your leaky funnel and really kind of drive performance drive performance out of your funnel. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to walk through those 5 specifically. And so the first one we want to talk about here is increase event and webinar ROI. So Amanda, how do you think about this?
Yeah, so I think especially even over the last year and a half when everything's gone virtual, you don't get to have those personalized conversations with people in person anymore. And so it's really important to drive opportunities for engagement before and after the event digitally and give people the actual opportunity to respond to you and engage to you rather than just kind of fire off a nurture email and hope for the best. So at Conversica, we use our post-event follow-up skill to reach out and make sure that people who didn't attend the event, for example, got a link to the recording. And so in this specific example, we trigger this conversation when, the leads are imported into Marketo, for example, they're in a no-show list and they automatically get, some outreach asking for if the person who missed the webinar would like a link to the webinar, rather than just firing off the link first. And somebody says, cool, I've got it. Now I have no reason to ever talk to you again. We say, can you let us know if you'd like the link? In this scenario, the lead responds that they weren't able to attend and they'd like to have the link. We fire off the link automatically. And the beauty of all of this is none of this is happening with human intervention. So, the AI assistant sees that the person has responded, that they'd like the link, and it knows to then send the link. Ask then for a meeting. So here's the link. Would you like to have a meeting and chat about it? The lead responds that yes, they'd like to talk between 3 and 5 on Friday. And again, without human intervention, the AI assistant responds and says, I'll get that scheduled. Is this the right contact information? And, the conversation closes when the lead confirms that that's correct. So, and then the rep is notified that this happened and so on, the sales process continues. But this is just a great way to squeeze more out of these digital events that, we often get these big, huge lists and we don't really know what to do with them because we haven't had really pointed conversations with people like we would at a traditional event in a booth. So that's one example, and that's what we do, honestly, today, all the time.
Exactly. And what about example number 2? This is one that people may not really think about using, but I'm seeing it come up more and more.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first started at Conversica, I was kind of like, no, we have lead scoring and we score the leads and we hand them off and that's how this goes. And really, at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you don't ask, you'll never know. And so we incorporate follow-up earlier in the funnel rather than waiting for somebody to score up in our lead scoring model. We kind of prioritize based on different criteria, and we say, okay, these are worth putting some extra touches on before we even hand them off to sales. So in this situation, this is literally a content syndication workflow for us. And so, we call out, hey, you downloaded, in this case, augmenting sales with intelligent virtual assistants. I wanted to see if you had any questions. So we remind the lead that they did something and what they did. And then we ask a qualifying question. And I think that's the most important part here. We're not just going straight to, can we get a meeting? Can we have a demo? It's tell me more about your qualification process and asking a qualifying question so that then inevitably, if that lead does get handed off to sales has additional information and can go into the conversation armed with some context for what they need to cover. So in this case, the IVA will attempt multiple times before they get a response. In this case, the lead responds that they're having a hard time with lead follow-up consistency. Again, without human intervention, the AI assistant says, we'd be happy to help. Can I set you up with a call? The lead says yes. And again, contact information is confirmed. And then the sales rep is notified that there's a meeting and so on. So, now, the rep has the context for the meeting that they're having a hard time with lead follow-up consistency. So out of the array of things that we do, the rep can be super relevant right out the gate with this person by talking about exactly what their problem is.
And that's really interesting. And I think for the audience, just to really consider what we're talking about here is this is what's called intelligent virtual assistants or AI assistants, right? And what they are is they actually act as digital team members to your marketing or sales team. And they can conduct these back and forth two-way dialogue, just like a person could, to determine that interest. And what you're seeing here is that a lot of times in our B2B marketing and sales processes, it really does require a back and forth exchange over a period of time. And so, every time an AI assistant does an outreach, it'll do it, its outreach will be different. So it does use AI, conversational AI, natural language processing, and which includes natural language generation, to actually create tailored emails out to the lead. And then if the contact responds back, it understands that response, and then what it does in turn is it crafts a tailored response in kind, as you can see here in these examples. So this could be done over many days, as it would take to get somebody to nurture and then engage with your with you as a vendor. Okay, so we've got 2 down. We've got a third one. Let's talk a little bit about engage and convert inbound demand. What does that really mean?
So this is the promptness, and this is the persistency, right? These are covering 2 of our P's right out the gate here. In this case, if somebody is coming to your website and raises their hand and says they want a demo, you want to make sure that you've got a touch on that person and you've reached out to them as quickly as possible, because we already talked about we all like instant gratification these days. So in this case, when somebody comes to our website and they download or they request a demo, they fill out a form, immediately our AI assistant follows up and says, thanks for doing that. Here's a reminder of who we are and why you wanted to talk to us, because sometimes in the 3 minutes that somebody fills out a form and they kind of forget what they just did, and they offer to set up, the AI assistant offers to set up a call. In this case, our lead says yes. Thanks for the follow-up. I was actually in touch with Derek earlier in the week, and we set up a call for next Tuesday. So this happens a lot, honestly. People will set up a call with somebody and then come back and fill out a demo form later. I see this all the time for some reason. So in this case, our AI assistant says, okay, great, you're in great hands. Just wanted to make sure you were good. And then it follows up again after that call should have happened and says, I wanted to check in and make sure that you got everything you needed. And this is a great way, if the person didn't show up to the meeting, or if they have additional questions, but they haven't gotten around to asking yet, this kind of prompts, hey, remember us. In this case, the person obviously attended the meeting, says that Derek was really helpful and they got everything that they needed. I think that something to also call out just in all 3 of these examples is we've been hyper personalized in all of these examples. We've been able to call out specifically the activity someone did, and then the conversation ensuing after that has been super relevant. But none of this has to be created by me, the practitioner, who's going in and setting this stuff up. Once I kind of point it in the right direction and I give it the context that it needs to be relevant, the AI system just runs. And that is the part that really takes a load off of both marketing and sales, marketing from a setup perspective and sales from a reply perspective, because the AI assistant is carrying the conversation until it's really worth sales' time. So it's a huge time saver across the board, if nothing else.
Yeah, I know. I mean, no, that it's really true. Like, look, number one is, I think it's important to note here is that, yeah, you don't have to write a single email. You don't have to write a single conversation exchange that you're seeing here. We actually have out of the box over 70 skills that our AI assistants can support, as well as that includes over 600 conversations. These are pre-built, battle-tested conversations across 1 billion plus interactions within our conversational AI platform. So these work for these specific use cases. You don't have to write a single line, and more importantly, there is no code here involved. This is a no-code solution. It's easy to get up and running in just a couple of weeks. All right, so you covered 3. We have 2 more to go. The second is really the next 2 are around kind of how to revive like stalled opportunities, right? And so one of the key things to think about is on this one, look, you can have a situation where you've been engaging back and forth with a rep could be engaging with a prospect back and forth, and all of a sudden that prospect may have gone silent. Who knows? Maybe they had went on vacation, did something. What happens here is at some point the rep's going to move on to other active opportunities, and they're not going to focus so much attention here. But what they can do is give these opportunities over to the AI assistant. And as you can see here, the AI assistant can pick up where the rep left off. And in fact, would come in, introduce themselves, right? The AI assistant will introduce itself. It will say, hey, Rep Dave asked me to reach out. And I just wanted to make sure we're not losing touch. So this is a fantastic way in being able to use AI assistants to keep opportunities warm, especially if they've gone silent. And I think another thing in these interactions that you're seeing as it's going back and forth is the fact that it is very human-like. Like 9 times out of 10, people don't even realize that they're actually not engaging with a human on the other end. And some people might say, oh, isn't that a little weird? Well, it's really up to the organization how transparent they want to be. Here, we're being pretty transparent, saying that this is an assistant. But at the end of the day, it's about the experience and the experience that your lead in contact is having. Are you able to meet their needs, and are those needs getting satisfied? And that's exactly what you're seeing in this exchange. And there's a couple, different ways to think about this too, because you can use conversational AI, and we call it conversational sales when it's specifically around sales use cases, to try and accelerate those stalled opportunities before you're marking them closed or lost. There's a couple different ways that you can think about it. Well, one of them is around, well, if your SDR contacts the lead, but then the lead goes dark, right? So back to that kind of, hey, you've reached out to us, you've kind of raised your hand, the SDR has tried to reach out to you, there's been no activity, you could hand it over to an AI assistant to do that follow-up. Otherwise, there could be a real active pipeline opportunity, right? An opportunity with pipeline dollars associated to it. You could be near that, latter stages of the opportunity, and then all of a sudden, the opportunity goes silent. For things maybe as something as procedural as, are we getting the right kind of last piece of asset information, or just want to make sure you have that proposal, or I sent that proposal out to you, have you had an opportunity to respond back? So these are different ways where you can use the AI assistant within that actual sales process. And then we come to the fifth common use case we see where marketing and sales leaders are using conversational AI, and that's about reactivating that dormant demand. I think you remember when we were talking about that leaky funnel, we had that one area where leads can actually go unnoticed. So these are the leads that go inactive. As I said, it could be 90 days, 120 days, whatever the SLA is for your organization. You can come back and say, you know what, let's go ahead and revive these because they're actually the right ICP. They fit our target audience profile, but let's just see if they're actually interested in having a conversation. So as you can see here, our AI assistant reaches out and says, it's almost summer, which means it's time to gear up for the second half of the year. And then talking about, we saw that you previously had showed interest in our Conversica AI assistants. I wanted to make sure you received all the information you were looking for. So hinting back with that context and that understanding that previously you had shown interest, it's been some time, let's reconnect. And that's exactly what it's asking to do here. And so it will continue again over its path, creating a new attempt, a unique attempt each time, reaching out until a response is provided or the number of cadences has been met. And then as you can see here, a response was provided. And then we sent, and as you can see, the response said, hey, you know what? Thanks for reaching out. I'm interested, but busy. Can you reach out in a few weeks when I have more time? Now the AI assistant knows this. It can understand it and says, you know what? It's time for me to check back later, 3 weeks later, exactly. And so what happens is they receive this on April 27th. 3 weeks later, the AI assistant automatically sends out that reminder and says, hey, I just wanted to follow up. As you mentioned, now was a good time to reach out. Can we set up a call? Thanks for the reminder. And then Conversica will go ahead and notify the rep to schedule a meeting and conduct the follow-up. So really, you saw 5 unique use cases. What did we learn? Here is that you can use AI assistants to absolutely improve that event and webinar ROI by either driving people to your events or immediately following up with them post your event. You can pre-qualify those inbound leads before you hand them off to sales, right? So seeing if you could find a better fit into your ICP, and also see if people are just automatically saying, yep, I'm a hand raiser, I'm ready to go talk to a salesperson. Engage and convert that inbound demand. Again, part of that alleviating that frustration of having no lead left behind. And then you've got the, how can we use an AI assistant to accelerate or revive stalled opportunities, whether that's pre-opportunity creation or actually in actual pipeline opportunity, and then reactivating that dormant demand. So Amanda, as I think about this, a lot of times I get next questions around, now, how does this fit into your overall lead engagement workflow? And this is not too dissimilar from what we see many of our customers actually, how they go about deploying AI assistants. Anything, when you think about it, because we have this connected up into our marketing automation tool as well as our CRM tool, anything that particularly stands out to you when you think about, hey, how do I know whether I should connect this into marketing automation versus CRM?
I think it kind of depends on where the lead is coming from. So if the lead is coming from something like an event or something like that, or you're trying to even revive cold leads, keeping that on the marketing automation side is kind of nice, because marketing has full control, obviously, over what happens in marketing automation. I think that there's nothing wrong with doing both. And then, when you've got it in the CRM, it's kind of great because it's going to hand off all of the information that it gathers directly to the lead record. So sales is going to have visibility into everything that happens right in where they work every day in the CRM. So I would say that if you're doing something that you don't necessarily, you're trying to just like feel out where somebody is at, maybe like a revive dormant demand campaign or something like that, where you want to then flag it for sales, maybe that's something you could do on the marketing side, like just with marketing automation. But if you're doing something like facilitating, following up with inbound demand, or it's something that's like really real time that is meant to be scheduling meetings and like, qualifying leads for sales, I think that it's important to have it, synced up with your CRM so that that information is getting directly to sales and they have all that context when they're doing their outreach.
110%. I think what's really important is when you're thinking about conversational AI, one of the things that we thought of very specifically is being able to slip right into the MarTech and sales tech stack, right? And so having, especially in the CRM system, where that salesperson is conducting, or the SDR, the salesperson is doing their daily activity, that you have the conversations from the AI assistant just naturally right there natively inside of the CRM, inside of the CRM contact that they've been engaging with. So there's no let me just put it this way, there's plenty of transparency in terms of what the AI assistant is doing. And there's also an opportunity, should at any time the sales rep wants to jump in and actually write on behalf of the AI assistant, they can actually do that. That's also a very powerful capability as well. But really simply to summarize here, when you think about that awareness, consideration, and moving through the funnel and the buyer's journey, there's different touch points where you're looking to do outreach or engage with your content. And just know that you can have different solutions doing very different things as part of that part of that process. And yes, absolutely, what we've highlighted today, those 5 areas of where you use conversational AI really do fit across this buyer journey. And then there's a couple of additional areas where you can consider as well that we didn't talk about, but also is really interesting within this workflow process. But another way to think about it, and I really like this. In fact, Forrester came up with this for us, and thinking everybody should be familiar with the B2B revenue engine waterfall. But what does that look like when you add conversational AI to it? And this is a great way to think about it from the acquisition side, all the different use cases you can support as the opportunities are going from detected to engaged to qualified, et cetera, as well as think about your existing customers. So it's really important to know that there's opportunity, plenty of opportunity to use conversational AI against your existing customer base to drive things like drive better health, expand product usage. This is ways to think about how can I retain and grow my customers at scale, especially when you're working with customer success or account management team that are highly leveraged, meaning that they might have 50 to 1 or 100 to 1 account to rep ratios. It's really hard to drive personalized outreach. To do any one of these things, consider using conversational AI to help support your team and augment them so that they can retain and grow their customers at scale. When we think about what does this translate into results, well, if you think about conversational marketing, that top of the funnel, like use cases, pretty much 1, 2, and 5 that we covered, we see really great engagement from engagement rates on average to above 7%. where that engagement, all of the leads that you message can turn into hot leads, about over 2%, and the days to hot is about 11, on average 11 days. Now, what this is data set you're looking at is all of our customers aggregated for the last 6 months. So this is the results we're seeing across our customer base over the last 6 months in terms of when they're using conversational AI in their customer revenue lifecycle. I think the other thing that's interesting to note is not only can you drive much better engagement, but you have the opportunity to accelerate stages of your lifecycle. And so when you think about how many days it hot for our conversational sales, 6 days, that's pretty fantastic, right? And then you think about on the customer success side, 11 days, that's really great in trying to drive that customer health and drive towards those renewal opportunities. In terms of a customer, ServiceNow is a great customer of ours. They used the language, they had a no lead left behind policy. And the reason being, they had a large volume of inbound leads that exceeded their sales capacity to follow up. And they wanted their sales development team or their account development team to really focus more on that outbound prospecting. Hey, and that makes a lot of sense. With the advent of ABM, coming into a lot of organizations today, there's a lot more focus on that outbound sales prospecting motion. And so they want to be able to free up those sales development reps along with those sales reps to do that. But what's going to happen to all those inbound leads that are coming in? They're not going to get touched. They're not going to get followed up on. So this is a great opportunity to use conversational AI to do exactly that. And so the results were great. Like, within the first 6 months, only working 9,000 leads, we found 43 hot leads for ServiceNow. That resulted in, over a year's time, they were able to create $6.3 million of pipeline and booked over $400,000 of revenue. A big thing to look at as well with AI assistants is that it frees your people up to do the things that they do best, right? And whether it's that outbound prospecting or really building those trusted relationships with their customers. And so what you get with AI assistants is additional workforce productivity. So in this case, ServiceNow got 25,000 hours of additional workforce productivity that saved them $782,000 of labor costs over a 2-year period. And then there's a fourth element here that we would like to talk about, which is really around data quality impact. Because as these assistants are going back, and if they are finding or identifying alternate phone numbers or preferred phone numbers based on what the response was, they will take and extract that phone number and update it into your CRM system or your system of record. So just imagine that. How many sales reps forget to actually update their CRM record? The AI assistant does it for you. ServiceNow had over 9,000 new phone numbers updated, and they were also able to find this other one, which is they were able to identify the unhealthy emails that they were reaching out to. And so another thing is about lead health. And are you able to send, are you sending emails to actually real active email addresses, or are they just, inactive? And so we can help you identify that better. So overall, how can you think about this? Well, just think about driving better performance across your customer revenue lifecycle using conversational AI assistants to help attract higher quality leads, acquire more leads, acquire more customers faster, and grow customers into advocates. And with that, I think we're out of time. But Amanda, thank you so much for joining us here today. And audience, thank you for joining us. Should you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out or go to our site at conversica.com.
Thank you.
Cheers.